In this video we are going to set up our prefab and bag structure for our inventory so that we can create our inventory bags from the script instead of setting them up here in the scene. The first thing I would like to do is to create our prefabs. So we can navigate to our prefab folder, and in here we can create a new folder called inventory, so that we can keep track of the prefab that belongs to the inventory. So if we open up our canvas and our inventory, you'll see that there are three things. There's an inventory, a bag, and a slot. So basically we actually need these three things on their own. We don't need them together. So if we open up our inventory prefab folder, we can actually take our slot and drag it in there. When you have done that, you can actually delete all the slots from the scene, like so, in that bag we're using right now. Then you can take the bag and drag it in there. And at the end, you delete all bags, and you take the inventory and drag in there as a prefab. So basically, all in all, we don't need the inventory as a prefab. I'm just going to save it if something should happen out here and I delete it by mistake, so I have it and I can pull it in without setting up this grid layout group again. So now we have our three prefabs. The next thing we have to do is to create our scripts for this. So go to script folder and right click and create a new folder called inventory. So we need to have an inventory script. So this is going to be the top script, the one that manages the other scripts like the bag and everything. And actually there's one thing I would like to point out before we continue. You can see this error up here, a Unity editor grid painting state. I've googled around and it's actually a bug in Unity 2017.3, and the bug appears whenever the tile palette is open. So when you add some changes, there's a chance this bug or this error is going to pop up. It's not going to affect anything, it's just annoying to look at. So you can just not delete, but close the tile palette and clear this, then you won't see this error again until you open up the tile palette again. So if you're annoyed about the error, then just close the tile palette. So we need to create some script. We have our inventory script, so that's the top script, that one that controls the others. So we can actually go to the inventory and add that script, and you can just apply that to the prefab by clicking the apply button. What else? We have our slots, so we need to create a new script called slot script. So we can go to our prefabs there and inventory, find the slot script and add component slot script. So now we have that. So another script we would need is a bag script. So let's go to our script folder under inventory, right click, create, and create a bag script. And then again you go back to the inventory folder in the prefabs, select the bag, add component, and find the bag script there. So now all these prefabs has the correct scripts on them. We will add some things to it because they need some references to each other. But for now, this is what we are going to do out here in the editor. So the next thing we have to do is to create our item. So I actually just lied because we need to create another script because our bags consists of items, right? A bag in our game is an item that we have used. We have a bag item. We right click on the bag item and then we create a bag that our player can use. So that's basically what we're going to do from the start, right? We create a bag and we use it right away from the script so that the player has a bag equipped when he starts the game. So go to the script folder and create a new folder called items. So this is where we're going to create every single item we have in a game, our helmets, our swords, our potions, and so on. All these things are going to be in here. So all items in the game has a parent or has a superclass, and that superclass is called item. And then below the superclass, all our items are like our potions and stuff. For example, we have a bag item in the game, we can right click on to equip it. Well, we will need to create a new script called bag. So that's why I called all the scripts that we have in the scene by themselves. They are called, let's see, that's inventory, let's see, items. There we go. So they're called script after, right? Bag script, inventory script, slot script. So this bag script is not confused with the actual item called bag. Okay. So let's try to open up item and fill it in with all the base info that all our items need. see if I can find it. I need to pull it on this screen. So our item needs, well, we don't need a start and an update function. And actually our item is not going to be a mono behavior. It's going to be a scriptable object. So what's a scriptable object? Well, a scriptable object is basically an object that exists in Unity without a game object, or a script that exists in Unity, so to say, without a game object. Normally when we have a script, it's attached to a game object, like this image script here, right? Well, a scriptable object is an object that we can script without having an actual game object that we need to attach it to. So we can instantiate it without it filling out our hierarchy here. And that's exactly what we want with the items. There's no reason for us to have an actual game object there. So our item needs a sprite, of course. So the sprite is the item, or is the icon that is going to be shown on the slots. So when one of my inventory slots, this is not an inventory, but one of these slots has an item on it, it needs to show an icon. So we need to make sure that everything has an icon on it. And some items can stack, so we're going to make an integer called stack size. And this is going to decide how many times this item can stack on itself. If it's 0, it's not stackable. If it's larger than 0, it is stackable. Or larger than 1, that so to say. So if it's 1 or 0, it's not stackable. So serialize field. And we also want to serialize this icon here. So when we pick up an item, we need to take the icon and show it to the player so he can see what he's carrying around. So the icon here actually needs to be, so we need to, what's called, create a property. Sorry if I'm stumbling on my words. And the property only needs a get. We only need to return it. We don't need to change the icon ever for an item. An item always have the same icon, so we just get it. The same goes to the stack size. We never want to set the stack size, we only want to get it. And remember, you can right click, quick action, and encapsulate the field, or you can just write this code here by yourself. And we need to have a reference to a slot. So an item only exists in the game if it's placed in the inventory. If it's outside the inventory or outside a loot table of a monster we just killed, it doesn't exist. Because if we drop it on the ground, it gets destroyed. So an item needs a reference to a slot that it's sitting on. And the reason that I have chosen to make sure the item has a reference to the slot it's sitting on is because it makes it easier for the item to be removed from the inventory, because then I can just click on the item and say remove, and then it removes itself from the parent slot. So we don't need to ask the inventory where the item is. The item just knows that it sits on a specific slot. So we are going to make a private slot script. It's going to be called slot, and I'm going to encapsulate the field. And this one I would like to be able to set and get at the same time, because I need to set the slot sometimes. If I move an item from one slot to another, the parent needs to change so that it knows that it's on another slot. So we need to get and set. And I don't want it public, I just want to protect it, because no one outside needs to be able to change that, only the item itself. So that's the base of the item. We need an icon, a stack size, and a slot. So that's basically what we need to create an item. So this item here can never exist on its own. There's no reason to have an item in the game, because an item is an abstract thing, but our specialized types is what we want. So basically I would like to make this one abstract, so that it can't exist on its own, because it doesn't make sense, but it is a parent class that can give functionality to items that inherit from it. So we have our bag. So our bag needs to have some things. Well, a bag has an amount of slots. So now we are going to construct the bag structure, the bag item structure, so we know what it needs to be able to do. So our bag is actually also an item, so it needs to inherit from item instead of mono behavior. And we need to create a protected game object bag prefab. And actually I'm just going to make this private for now. So this is the prefab that will be instantiated in our game, so that we can see the bag on the screen and click on the different slots on it. So this is the actual prefab for the item we create in the scene. So we're going to make a property here for our back script, and it's going to be called my back script. So this property here is used for setting the back script that this back belongs to, because there's some functionality inside the back script we would like to be able to call from the actual back item. And that's, for example, creating the slots and everything. So we need to be able to get the amount of slots that this back has, because when we instantiate it, we need to create an amount of slots, for example. So we need to get those so we can create them. And we need to set it, and the easiest way to set it is just to make an initialize function with an amount of slots. So you could also just make a set function setter up here on the slots. I just like to create an initialize function so I know what I'm doing, right? I might forget to set the amount of slots if I just have a property, but when I have a function called initialize, I know I need to call this initialize function when I create the slots. At least it makes it easier for me to remember I need to do this when I create it, or create the back, I mean. So this dot slots equals slot there. So now the amount of slots has been set. I can delete start and update. There we go. And we would also need a use function. So this use function here is actually a part of the iUsable. So I can actually implement iUsable, because remember, some items are usable and the back is usable because I can right click on it. So you can actually just go up here and write iUsable, right click on it, quick actions, and implement interface. And then we have the use function down here that we need to implement. So we can delete this non-implemented exception here. So what's going to happen, what should happen when I click a back, when I right click on it to use it in my game? Well, it needs to create a back for our player and create a lot of slots in that back so that we can use those slots to place different items on them, right? So the first thing I have to do is to create my back script. I need to create a reference to the back script that I'm creating by right clicking on the item. And it needs to instantiate a back prefab. So what's a back prefab? We already know we created some prefabs in here. Let's see here, prefabs, inventory, this one. So it's going to instantiate a back prefab without any slots on them. So when I right click on an item in my inventory, it creates this back with 0 slots. Okay, so that's what just happened here. What then? Well, I need to set a parent, because the back needs to be a child object of the actual inventory here. So I don't place it anywhere else, because it needs to apply to this grid layout. So it needs to be a child object of this. So what's the easiest way to do that? Well, actually we can just go to our UI manager. Inside the UI manager, you can scroll all the way to the top and then select the singleton and copy it. And then go to the inventory script and paste it in here. And of course you need to replace UI manager with inventory script. When you've done that, we can jump back to the back, because as you can see here, it asks for a parent, and the parent is going to be the inventory, so that the slot or the back will be a child object of the actual inventory. So I can write inventory script.myInstance.transform to make sure that happens. So you can see there's still a red line because my back script is of type of back script, and this one returns a game object. So we need to get the actual back script on that game object we're instantiating, because remember, we are instantiating a back prefab, and the back prefab has a, as you can see, back script on it, and that's the one we want to grab so we can start doing some other things with it. So when we create a back, it's totally empty, there are no slots in it. So we can actually try to go to our back script, and in here we have to write some things, because right now we're just instantiating an empty back, and that's not what we want. We would like to create some slots on it. So for the back to be able to create some slots, it needs a slot prefab. So we're going to create a slot prefab. We're going to serialize this so that it can actually access a prefab and instantiate it. And then we are going to create a new function called add slots, and it's going to take an integer with a slot count. So this is going to be the amount of slots this back script is going to create. So we're going to make a for loop that runs this amount of times, and based on that we are going to instantiate our slot prefab as a child object of the actual back itself, and instantiate. Oh wait, I'm using the slot count instead of slot prefab. There we go. So I'm instantiating the slot prefab, and I'm putting as a child object of the actual back script, so the slots will be childs of the back. And that's why I can write transform, because the back script is sitting on the actual back that instantiates the slots. So now we have a function for creating a back which creates its own slots based on the add slot function. So that this add slot function needs to be called inside the back, because we're using the back by right clicking on it or doing whatever. And then we instantiate our back, so I can say my back script dot add slots, and then the amount of slots that we need to add. So up here we're initializing our back with an amount of slots, so we can just use that amount to generate the right amount of slots on the actual back. Well, then now we have our class, but how do we create it? Well, this is going to be a scriptable object, which means that we can create it as an asset in our project. So I can do like this, go to the top of the class and make square brackets, and here we're going to create asset menu, and the file name of this asset is going to be back, capital B, and the menu name is going to be under items / back, and then order is going to be 1. So this will create a menu for us so that we can create this asset and set up all the serialized fields on it before we create it. So if you save this and go back to Unity, and you go to the asset menu, create, you'll see something called items and a back. So this is going to create a back prefab for us. And basically I would like to create a new folder inside prefabs called items folder, and in there I would like to put the actual back, like so. So all our items are going to go in here, so every time we have an item it's going to be inside this prefab folder. So our back needs an icon. The icon that the back needs is this one for me. The stack size, well, the backs are not going to be able to stack, so I'm going to put it at 0. The back prefab though is going to be the prefab from our prefabs folder, so just click there. Right. I guess I can't find it. Let's see here. Let's go to prefabs, inventory. We have this back here. Just drag it on there. Oh wait, you can see it says game manager. So of course I misspelled in here. It's a game object. Maybe you already saw that when I made the mistake. Yeah, so now that's fixed. That was a stupid mistake. We can go back here and let's see if I have to create the actual asset here. Yeah, now it's game object, which means I can click here and find my back and put it there. So now we have our item with an icon, a 0 stack size, and a reference to the actual back prefab. So how do we create this? Well, for debugging purposes, we can go to our inventory script, and in here we can make a private game object array called items. So this is going to be our items for now, and I'm going to serialize this. So based on this, we can just instantiate whatever item we would like to test in our inventory. In the gameplay, there will be loot tables on our monsters, so when we kill them there's a loot table and we can take something from them. So this is just for debugging. So in start we can say that we would like to create a bag, and that bag should be from this inventory oh sorry, not inventory, array. So let's see here, we can go here and we can find our canvas and our inventory and open up items here and say the size is 1. Then take the bag and drag it down there, and of course, yeah, this is a game object, so this is going to be an item, of course, like so. Save it and then jump back and then wait for Unity to update. There we go. So now we can take the bag and drag it onto there, so we have a reference to the actual bag item we have in our prefab folder. So with that done, we can jump back to the script here, and then we can go to start, because in here we can actually generate that object, and we can do that very simple. Actually, let's just do it in a wake to make sure that this is some of the first things we do, because we need to equip a bag. So we create a bag, and this is by instantiating the item on position 0. This is my bag, and I need to cast it to a bag to make sure that I get the right type. So I take item 0. In general, this is not good practice because there are lots of different items in here, but this is debugging purposes, right? So we take item 0. Okay, so what did we need to do with our bag? Well, we need to initialize it. Remember, we need to initialize it with an amount of slots, let's say 16, because we created that function just for initializing it. And with that done, we say bag.use. And then we use it to equip all the slots on the bag. So we create it, we initialize it, and we use it. So use is basically going to be what is what's going to happen if I have a bag in my inventory and I right click on it. But for now, we're just doing it from the script just to test if it works. So let's see. If we run it now, we'll get a reference description, null reference. There you can see, unassigned. So what's that? Well, if we go to inventory and select our slot and our inventory, everything here is fine. Let's see a bag. On the bag, you'll see there's slot script prefab, which has not been set. So we need to take the slot and drag it onto there so it can instantiate our slots. So if we clear now and play, we have a bag of 16 slots, and it's based on this line, these lines of code. And if you change this to 20, you'll see that if you save and rerun the game, you'll get a 20 slot bag instead, as you can see there. So that's the base of what we need to do to equip our bags. And of course, it's the base of the items, because we have an item and we have our bag. So this is the structure of our items, items in the game. So you'll see that we will be creating lots of different items for different purposes, but they will all have their superclass as item, of course. So that's what I want to show you in this video. Thank you very much for watching. In the next one, I think we're going to create our bag bar maybe and start equipping our bags on the actual bar. Thanks for watching my video. Please remember that InScope Studios is a community founded page, so please consider clicking the support link on the screen to see how you can support me and get something back in return.